Hola, I am here to talk to you about brain health. I know it says foreign language. That's because brain health, there's just so much about your brain that is helped by learning a foreign language. So, foreign language is an elective you can't afford to skip. And my job today is to explain to you why and how. So, Señora Ghost, my name is Suzanne Ghost. I am a mom, homeschooler, a linguist, a curriculum creator, and a teacher. I am a former public school teacher, so I've taught literally thousands and thousands of students, teenagers, all kinds. And I became a homeschooler whenever baby number one, he's that one in the green polo there, uh, whenever he surprised us. I am a private lesson teacher. I teach Spanish classes still, even now, weekly at the Community Homeschool Center. And that's what I founded 15 years ago, whenever that little girl on the right was born. And so I still have those classrooms and help to run the Community Homeschool Center even now. I'm a dedicated linguist, and I turned into a curriculum creator because I couldn't find anything to teach students how to actually speak Spanish in a week. And then it turned out all the things that we had to do with homeschooling and with teaching lessons and learning lessons, it's so much more than just Spanish. So this is not what this class is about. This little seminar is not about increasing your audience, which you, of course, will do by learning a language, a second language. Increasing your earning power, $15,000 more per year if you are bilingual. And they don't mean bilingual in French or Latin, sorry. Travel potential. Obviously, you can travel to those 25 different countries with Spanish as their main language. The students will get more cultural diversity and empathy. Whenever you learn a second language, you go, whoa, that person is from a different culture than me, and I'm having a hard time. So you have more empathy for them because you're learning a second language. And of course, you have a more complete global view. All these things are fantastic about learning a second language, but none of that stuff is what I'm talking about today. This is what I'm talking about. Your brain health improves in short-term memory. So with the handout that you have, I'd like you to check off which students, you have your children's names over at the top, across the top, and then which areas might it benefit them to improve in short-term memory, long-term memory, cognitive speed, relational understanding, like is there every misunderstanding about tone or body language, being able to do their grammar exercises, understanding their own language at a deeper level, hand-eye coordination. Do you have any clumsy students? Do you have an older person in your life that has dementias or dementia in your household as far as in your family line? Spatial relationships, logic, if then, consequences. Do they listen and respond immediately? Are they able to process that? And then the biggest thing for me, I think, is executive function. All of these things are we're going to talk about in very specific ways about how to improve these items by learning a language and what the process is here. So how you learn the second language, whatever it is, I mean, I'm going to say Spanish. It does work. Okay, your brain function will improve with learning German, French, Chinese, Japanese, any other Russian, Swahili, all those different languages. Your brain function still will improve with a spoken language. It's not as much with ASL or Latin because Latin's not spoken very often, ASL because it's not spoken at all. And it has to do with the listening and the speaking that causes these improvements. But how you learn to speak does matter. If you learn with immersion, you must have a purpose. I don't like it when people say, oh, we're learning Spanish by immersion by going to a class. You're not immersed if you're going to a class. Immersion means you are immersed, like your atmosphere is that language. So you'd have to live in a Spanish-speaking country, or at the very least, a Spanish-speaking area where only Spanish is spoken, except for when you break out of it into English or your native language with your family and friends. Otherwise, it's just authentic input. Your stress level matters. If you're stressed out, taking notes, frustrated, upset, in a cold environment, the fluorescent lights are bothering you, you don't like your teacher, that changes whether or not your brain function is going to improve. Is the speed correct? Are they going too fast? Are they going too slow? If you do the same words again and again and again, that can affect whether or not you're improving your brain health. Age. Age is a big deal. Before puberty, you have a nice pliable brain. You absorb things very easily. The younger, the better. They grab words so quickly because they're communicating. They want to communicate. And it's fun and they're able to do it. They're not scared at all. As you near puberty, it gets a little bit harder. Throughout puberty, you got hormones and endorphins to worry about. And then after puberty, your brain begins to harden. After age 25, it's quite difficult to learn a second language. Not impossible, but it takes a lot more effort. And so the cool thing though is when you exercise at an older age, the health benefits are that much bigger. Oh my goodness, if you're having fun, if you need to learn a list of items or any kind of facts, it typically takes about 20 times of repetition, 20 repeats to get that into long-term memory. Unless you're playing a game, it only takes 6 times. 6, if you're having fun. And of course, we want to talk about your learning preferences. Learning preferences, I say that instead of learning styles, because at age 3, everybody's tactile. At age 8, everybody's tactile and visual. And then as we could become adults, we're mostly visual because that's the way information is presented to us. So your learning style between age 6 and 13 is really very effective, right? Visual, audio, tactile. After that, it changes a bit and your learning preferences are not as strong and you just want, it's easier for you to learn, but it's not necessary. So I like, that matters a lot. How you learn makes a difference in your life. So are you ready to improve your memory? I mean, what is learning anyway, right? We have some cards here. Those are my flashcards, to see it and say it flashcards. We have a picture on one side, the Spanish, the English, and the phonetic spelling on the other. Once you apply that information, so we have El Tocino in the middle, bacon. That's bacon next to the eggs, and then next to the little boy eating like Nutella or something. That bacon on there, El Tocino, will go into your short-term memory. And then once it becomes long-term memory, El Tocino, then we call it learning. So learning is just short-term memory, typically takes 3 times, El Tocino, El Tocino, El Tocino. And then long-term memory, it can be 20 times, right? 20 times a repetition over a short period of time or a long period of time, depending on the age, depending on the fun, depending on your passion and your motivation. And now, can you remember how to say bacon? If you're younger than puberty, you'd be like, yeah, El Tocino, because you're likely, above puberty, you probably didn't remember it because I didn't show you the word. Whenever you communicate that word, that wakes up the memory skills. So if I say, me gusta el tocino, I mean, and who doesn't? Me gusta means I like. Me gusta el tocino. I like the bacon. Me gusta el tocino. Or maybe you're like, no, it's too much salt. No me gusta el tocino. And you're actually trying to tell somebody next to you. So if you have somebody sitting there with you, look at them and say whether me gusta or no me gusta. Me gusta, I like, or no me gusta el tocino. What you just did was you communicated to somebody, me gusta el tocino or no me gusta. You gave them an opinion, and that communication happened in a second language. Therefore, your memory skills just woke up a little bit more. You just woke up a little dead, shriveled part of your brain, and that's what happens. This part of your brain up here stays dead and shriveled unless you communicate in a second language. So there's 4 types of memory. There's short and long-term memory. That's 2 of them, right? Which we talked about. There's sensory memory. How does something feel? And then there's working memory, something that you have to use in order to do something. So accomplishing a goal in an ongoing basis, using it again and again and again while you're doing it. Sensory memory is super important too. So if you feel bad when you're learning something, if you feel bad in an event, your body will actually keep you from absorbing that information, will give you a reason to not absorb something. So this is one of the reasons we homeschool, right? We remember being stressed out or whatever it was, and we did not like it. So now we're trying to create or prevent a negative sensory episode for our own children as they learn. Cognition, your cognition is going to improve. Well, guess what? What is intelligence? Intelligence is just cognition at a higher speed. Wit, the speed of processing, those connections between context and environment. Those connections is what means intelligence. That's what intelligence is, the quotient, the speed of being able to recall and then produce information, making those connections between things that may be unrelated or might be related. We decide that quickly, and that speed is what we call intelligence. So when you wake up that part of the brain, that's dead and shriveled, except you just woke it up a little bit, right? You just said, "Beep," and you added a little fiery poof of energy there. Ta-da! It happened. That pathway is now open. And so whenever you have a bunch of traffic and you can only go this way, it slows down. Your cognition slows down. Too much information, not enough absorption speed. You wake up this synapse over here, now there's another pathway. So things are able to move more quickly. So it's not so much that you're using that bit of information, it's that you woke up that pathway and now that pathway is awake because of learning a second language. This part stays dead. There's no other way to wake it up. And so more speed equals more space, more folds, more elasticity, intelligence goes up. Elasticity, yeah. So whenever they did autopsies on humans that had that died from old age, if you were bilingual, the physical elasticity of your brain, the bounciness physically was more. It was better. It was more springy if you were bilingual or trilingual or more. If you only knew one language, it had hardened, which means dementia set in earlier. Alzheimer's set in earlier because you don't have that elasticity. Okay, so I'm like, thanks, Suzanne. That's really nice. I'm glad that you're telling me that I have to learn a second language, but what is it going to actually help me? Is it going to actually help me today? Yes, it will. So here's my two cuties more than 10 years ago, two of my five. They're using the See It and Say It flashcards there, and they're speaking Spanish and using their spatial relationships. So one of the things that will help with their language is hand-eye coordination, spatial relationships, grammar depth. So they're using sentence starters and nouns. Later on, they learn about verbs and adjectives. And so look how that one right there, he's got two fingers on the words. He is super tactile learner, super kinesthetic. His audio processing, he's hearing it and he's repeating it. That by itself is using a part of the brain that doesn't often get used, just to listen and repeat. And so whenever you're doing that, you're helping other areas when they need to listen and repeat, or when they need to listen and respond. And then the relational maturity and understanding, because they're doing this, they're actually having another experience together, struggling together, right, in the second language. And that causes a maturity and a level of development that doesn't happen otherwise, except by learning a second language. So those are all really good, important parts. But to me, this is the biggest part, the real benefits. Long-term brain health. If you are older than 15, okay, let's not say that. If you're older than 25, you have probably thought about memory. You've probably lost a little bit of memory here and there. You go into the room, you go, wait, I can't remember what I was doing here. What's happening? And then you think, oh my goodness, what am I going to do when I'm a grandma? What about dementia? Well, if you learned a second language and you have that space up there that is awake, you actually give yourself 10 more years. They did a study and they said, why are people in Europe not getting diagnosed with Alzheimer's until they are 83, whereas the average person in America is getting diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 72 to 73. Why is that? And so they thought, well, maybe the doctors know more about Alzheimer's in America. Nope, same standards, same number of people. All right, maybe it's culture, maybe it's food that they're eating, maybe it's lifestyle, exercise, maybe it's genetics, maybe it's their race. You know, this race over here in Europe doesn't get it as often or as quickly. Nope. After it was all said and done, the one thing that was similar across the board was that the people in Europe knew more than one language. If they looked at Americans, bilingual Americans, so immigrants, that was another thing. They're like, oh my goodness, all these immigrants don't get diagnosed with Alzheimer's. They have a whole another 10 years of memory and wit because they know a second language. Stroke survival. If you have a stroke, you have a brain trauma of some sort, you're in a wreck, something happens, and you know a second language, you are able to survive a stroke better. Executive functioning. So if you have autism, Asperger's, Downs, anything like this, whenever you have trouble with remembering more than one thing at a time, processing that, time management, knowing how to put things away and keep things away, you know, those kind of basic things. Again, I'm not saying it's makes it perfect. I'm not saying it's a magic pill. I'm saying it makes it better. And so you're able to do all these things in day-to-day life better because your brain health in general is improved simply by studying and communicating. Okay, you can't just memorize the list of words. That doesn't help. It helps a tiny bit because you're saying it, you're hearing it, you're looking at a picture. It's when you communicate to another human. So this screen stuff, apps, nope, no help at all. Not no help at all. Not as much help as actually communicating with your family members and friends or other students in a class. This is why I have whole family Spanish. It's not just about learning Spanish. It's about actually using it. And then your logic center is improved. I mean, who has an 11-year-old boy that would like him to be able to remember that if you take your shoes off outside, they are going to stay outside until you get them. Cause and effect. This is not going to magically undo. Just because you want them to be in your closet doesn't make them in your closet. You have to remember where you put things. And so your logic center in general, because of this part of your brain waking up, the more you learn, the more you communicate, the better your brain health is, and all these things improve. It's like doing push-ups. Football players that do push-ups win games. They don't do the push-ups during the game. The push-ups, the upper body strength, that fundamental is what wins the game. But they never do a push-up during the game. So, okay, all right, now we go here. How to learn. Well, there's a few different ways, right? Of course, we have textbooks, audios, and videos. That's not terrible. There's class sessions. I'm a big proponent of going to class, learning with other kids in the same age range, enjoying that, looking at each other's faces, pointing and listening to the words and repeating as a group. That's a great way to learn. Hands-on lessons, so we have games to play, speaking of Spanish while you're playing games, moving flashcards around on the table. That's huge. Touching and repeating, huge. Stories are a great way to learn. After you've gotten a few words under your belt, listening to a story and or watching even movies in Spanish or in that second language will help because they're communicating to you. That's part of the steps. Apps are not such a great way to learn, unfortunately. Apps, so when you turn on a screen, like right now I'm staring at a screen, my developmental part of the language development part of my brain is turned off. The scientists don't know why. They just know that part of the brain goes dark, not dead, goes dark. Something about the reflective surface, something about it not being real life. The language development part is like, this is not real. I am not growing right now. So it's not impossible to learn a language from an app, but you've created a new problem because an app is on a screen. It's not on a piece of paper. Piece of paper is fine. The Kindle with the paper-like screen, it's still a screen. The brain still knows. It has to actually be a book that's physically turning, flashcards, games, things like that. Your brain is all active. In front of a screen, parts of your brain turn off. So now you have a new obstacle. So to me, try your best to not learn from a screen. After puberty, it's not such a big deal. Before puberty, it's a huge deal, which is why I don't have any videos for little kids. I don't like it. I have hands-on flashcards. I don't even like teaching classes online for little kids. I've done it, and it's a little bit different because it's reactionary. I'm actually there engaged with them. We have a relationship, we have a friendship, but even so, I don't like it. So try your best to keep your kids off of screens as much as possible. Learning preferences, we talked about this a little bit. How do they like to learn? Do they like to have hands-on? Are they more visual? Are they more audio? Those all give you ways to focus and choose. So make sure that all of your learning language stuff has an audio portion. You don't want to just be reading it because you're going to mispronounce things. In general, when you're learning a language, no matter if you're using any one of these, right? Textbook, classes, flashcard stories, no matter what it is, please start small. Start with one word, maybe two. Do not start with a big long phrase. Do not start with a whole bunch of sounds you have to string together. Look at an item, learn the item in the second language. That's how you learned your first language. And so that's why we have photos on our flashcards and not cartoons. Your brain is hardwired to learn nouns first. Mama, daddy, baba, Teddy, whatever it is in, blanket, whatever it is in their crib, whatever it is in their room that, mom and dad are showing to them. It's a physical item and the baby repeats it. Your brain wants to learn that way. It's already ready. It's primed. It knows the system. Do it that way. Start with 1 or 2 words max at a time, then build. All right, in review. Second language offers improvement in these areas: short-term memory, long-term memory, cognitive speed, relational understanding, grammar understanding, hand-eye, delays, dementia, all these wonderful, wonderful things. So I'd like to see right now if you can remember how to give the communication that you enjoy the flavor of bacon. I like bacon. Can you remember what you said to the person next to you? Me gusta el tocino. So doing that tiny little thing will help you to continue to improve your brain health. Not only is it motivation about money, reach, global empathy, but it's about your health. So I hope I've encouraged you to recognize that even one word, one sentence a week is worth it to continue small little baby steps to help your student improve in every other area. Math, science, history, memory, cognition, logic, writing, literature, all those things will improve. Relationships by learning a second language. There's no other way to turn that part of the brain on. Don't skip it. You'll be very happy that you did continue to do it. And then the snowball will grow and they'll get better and better and better. And then those other things will improve alongside it. So no matter what your age, no matter how many children you have, no matter what their ages are, find one method, some method, preferably not screens, to start learning a second language. Hope that helps. If you have any questions, I'm here to help you. You can start with a set of flashcards. You can start with a calendar. I have one word a day. Builds up to a sentence at the end of the week. We have level 1 and level 2. All these things exist because I couldn't find anything. I totally would have just bought a set. I was a public school teacher. You buy the books, you teach the books. If that had existed, if it worked, if something had worked, I promise I wouldn't have made Flip-Flop Spanish. All right. You can catch me on Facebook, Instagram, and of course over email. I hope this helps you and your teenagers to recognize the importance of foreign language, and it doesn't have to be scary and it doesn't have to be hard.